This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Tess Terrible, in for Catherine Shen. Shawna Lander is not Shawna the Mom. In her words, she is every mom. You might know her from her one-woman skits on YouTube or TikTok, where she has millions of followers. I discovered Shawna a few years ago. I can't tell you what the video was about or where I was when I watched it. But I can say this, it really resonated with me. It found me at the right time when I was navigating my own complicated family dynamics. And it seems to resonate with millions of others. Shawna's drama-filled clips are fictional, but touch on real-world themes of motherhood and the ups and downs of family life. Maybe her videos resonate with you too. It was to my complete surprise and delight that Shawna recently agreed to sit down with me for an interview. We explore early motherhood and navigating family dynamics with all the grief, anger, and joy that comes with that. Just a heads up for our listeners, this conversation contains themes of abuse and pregnancy loss. That's later in the hour. Let's jump into the conversation. So Shawna, we're going to go back to the beginning. Tell me how this all got started for you, because although you're a mom and you're navigating parenthood, you have said that Shawna is not you. She is every mom.
Yeah, Shauna's not me. I am an actor by trade, and when I had a baby, I went through the experience and of becoming a mom and sort of went, whoa, this is nothing like I expected it to be. And because of that, I was really hungry for any sort of media that would reflect back to me what it was I was going through. And I couldn't find it. Not in its entirety. Some things, some components of it I could find. And it really got me questioning why. And at the same time that was happening, this other thing was happening where my creative mind was absolutely exploding because I wasn't doing any of my work. I wasn't acting. I was at home with baby. And so I was itching to act and was finding no media that was reflecting me back to me. And so those two worlds just sort of collided. And I went, oh, I can start making content. And that's really how it began. I started with one-off skits that were representative of the types of things that moms go through when they get pregnant, have a baby, become a mother.
So there's a lot of media about motherhood, and like you said, it's not always accurate. In my perspective, it often feels a bit one-dimensional. Was there something specific that you weren't seeing in kind of traditional media narratives about motherhood that you were kind of craving, I guess?
Yeah, the full breadth of what the reality of becoming a mother really is. And I think that I wasn't seeing it because the moms in all of the storylines were a supporting character, or they were a mother, but they had this whole other life happening. So it was several years after they had become a mother. The story of becoming a mom and that transitional period was not being told. It was. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Okay.
curious, like, when we think about, when I picture in my head media we have about becoming a mother, it of course shows the messiness of becoming a new mom, and it's often done in a humorous way, but there's something lacking in it that I'm
Heart.
still, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's missing the heart because when you become a mom, when you have these babies, yeah, I mean, it's chaotic because suddenly you've got this unit, right? This other entity that's like, I don't know, barfing on you or whatever. And so that's messy and gross and gets to your mouth and then you want to barf, but you can't because you're holding it together for the baby. And there is humor in that. That is really funny. But at the same time, all of that is happening, there's still the heart of the person at the very center of it, which is the mom, and there's still that unconditional love for child, and yeah, so the humor sometimes, I won't say all the time, but I when I was going through it, I found that the humor about it was missing heart.
Mm. So you're an actress yourself. You weren't seeing yourself and your experience in motherhood really portrayed in media. And, you mentioned before that need to be creative, that want to have that kind of outlet. But I was curious if, like, when you were starting to build out the Shawniverse, were you really consciously trying to create content not found anywhere else? Because when I think about your content, it's very, like, transformational is the word that comes to mind. Maybe revolutionary, one of those, I
Oh,
think.
thank you. Was I consciously setting out to create the universe? Yeah. Um, I didn't think it would happen online.
Mm.
I consciously set out to put this content that I didn't feel like I was seeing into the world. And from that, I was hoping to build myself a bridge into like possibly to film and television and a wider audience. I did not expect the wider audience to find me online.
Your wider audience did find you online. That very first video you posted on TikTok had got 200,000 views very, very quickly.
Hey, babe, will you start getting them in PJs? I'm just gonna clear the table.
On it. I am the pajama monster! Ah!
Great.
Were you surprised to see how many people it had reached and resonated with?
Yes, very much so. That was shocking. It was the first skit I ever did. I had dabbled a tiny bit in TikTok, trying to use viral sounds or trying to figure out what this platform was. It was the very first time I went, oh, let me just make a skit. And I just sat down and did it. I put my baby down for a nap and just boom, this idea popped into my head. And I was like, could I do that just right now? And I filmed it myself, just sitting on my chair right next to a window. I filmed it with the intention of capturing the idea so that I could go back later and fix it and perfect it. And after I had filmed it, I went, why don't I just post it? And then I posted it, and it got way more views than I had ever gotten before. And it was shocking and scary, and I didn't post anything again for a month.
That's crazy to me. I mean, because we all do that. Like, we all just post the video for our friends, or I'm thinking maybe this was for like your mom group, and then suddenly it exploded.
Yeah.
So what started as standalone videos has become kind of a full narrative. Can you kind of walk me through, like, going from you post this one video to realizing like that this could be its own standalone show that needed a plot?
The idea of creating a show around early motherhood, around the transformational period, going from regular adult woman into mom, was always in my mind. That was always in the back of my mind. It happening online really came as a surprise to me because it did start off with these standalone videos. When doing these standalone videos, I was trying to illustrate. I was trying to capture moments that women go through when they're becoming mom. You know, somebody boundary crossing, somebody telling you how to do it better, somebody touching your body or commenting on your body because your body's now become public property. And in doing these little skits, I included a husband character. And then after that, I included a matriarch sort of character who was giving her unsolicited advice and opinions. And that matriarch character hit, and people started equating it to their own experiences with their mothers and their mothers-in-law. And I went, oh, there's something here. Okay. So I revisited the husband, I revisited the mother-in-law. And after a few videos that were not connected to any other storyline of the mother-in-law, I started getting requests for a sister-in-law or a peer level that invalidated mom's feelings also. People were really gravitating to the emotional validation of seeing themselves in a piece of content, which resonated with me. And so it was just this symbiotic relationship between what I was posting and what the audience was seeing and asking for. And then I understood what they were asking for. And so I posted more, and characters were born of it. And one day I was like, you know what? I want to put that mean sister-in-law character through pregnancy and birth and early motherhood and see what happens to her. Because you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And that's what happens with Jennifer in the storyline. And that's how it was born. That's how it was created.
I think it's one thing to have these kind of standalone characters and skits, but suddenly when you have built out what you call the Shawnaverse, I wonder if you kind of go ahead. Did you want to?
I love the Shawnaverse.
Yeah.
I don't call it that. I do call it that now, but followers coined that. People watching the series coined that. I ran with it.
I love that. I love that because so much of your channel and your content seems like it's been so fan inspired, and along that lines, I mean, you're going from the standalone plots or the standalone clips to having this big universe, this big show. Did you feel kind of a sense of responsibility when you transitioned from I'm going from standalone skits where these are kind of individual storylines to these are characters that I'm going to spend time with and be creative with and develop an arc with? Because I think a lot of creative people, when they're developing characters, you kind of develop an attachment to those people you're either acting out or creating.
I feel a responsibility to the reality of humanity, and to the truth of the motherhood experience. The characters themselves, I love the characters and enjoy everything they get up to. I feel a responsibility to represent life truthfully and to remain grounded and in touch with how this really goes for people. And again, I want to hold up that mirror so people can see themselves and feel not so alone in their journey.
Today, we're hearing from Shawna Lander. She's an actress and creator behind the one-woman show, Shawna the Mom. She'll stay with us after the break. From Connecticut Public Radio, I'm Tess Terrible. This is Where We Live. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Tess Terrible, in for Catherine Chen. Today, we're listening back to my conversation with creator Shawna Lander. She's the actress behind Shawna the Mom, a series of one-woman skits on TikTok and YouTube that explores new motherhood and complicated family dynamics. One thing that keeps me going back to Shawna's content is her commitment to authenticity. Chances are, if you're a loyal follower like myself, her characters feel all too real. Just a heads up before we jump into the conversation, we're about to talk about themes of abuse. You've said before in interviews that you're Shawna, but you're not Shawna the Mom, and your husband, your real life husband, is John, but is not the John that you're portraying. You've said the same thing about Barb, who is Shawna's mother-in-law, that we're going to talk about in depth a little bit later. So I'm curious where you drew inspiration for some of these characters and their stories, because they're all very familiar.
That's good to hear. That's what I want. Yeah, Shawna in the show is a mom, but I never went out in the wild and lived my life and then came home and wrote down what happened that day and turned it into a skit. Shawna was never me that way. And in the same way, when we talked earlier about sometimes the comedy feels like it's missing something, in the same way that it's difficult to represent a concept or an idea in its entirety in one skit or in one joke, it's also difficult to represent an entire person in character form. So Shawna is like a general mom, and the kinds of things that moms think and feel on self-report in the comments, on self-report with, when I'm hanging out with other mom friends. When women get together, we share, and everyone kind of goes, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's the vibe I was trying to give Shawna from its inception, from the very beginning of all this. The John character is a husband character, and he's every husband in the same way that Shawna's every mom. John has become sort of like an idealized version of a husband. He's got his own emotional struggles, but I think so do a lot of men. Mm-hmm. And for John in the storyline, it stems from his upbringing, the difficult way or non-way that emotions were dealt with in his family life. And I think that's true of a lot of men. And and then the Barb character, my mother-in-law is not like that. That's a question I get a lot. But I do know women like that. And I recognize that woman. I had a neighbor who was that woman. I know that woman. I've experienced her. I've encountered her over and over and over again in like many facets of life, not just in motherhood.
But you seem to...
Shut the door, please.
Well, Maxwell really seems to want his Grammy tonight.
Barb, the answer is no. Get out.
Oh. Jonathan, your wife yelled at me.
Go home, Mom.
Oh, so you let her treat your mother like that?
What are you talking about? Let her? It might be a foreign concept to you, but I don't control and manipulate the people I love.
Not sure what you're insinuating.
You control and manipulate everyone. It's abuse.
I think we all know Barb, and I want to ask you more about her. So for our listeners that might not be as familiar with your content, Barb is a character that Shawna plays. This is Shawna, the character's mother-in-law, who is kind of a very typical mother-in-law archetype. She's continually pushing boundaries. She wreaks a lot of havoc on the family. But this is often done in deeply harmful and sometimes abusive ways. So tell me a little bit more about how you formulated that character, because as you said before, she is someone that has deeply resonated with your audience.
Yeah, she was somebody who at first crossed boundaries and was maybe sort of rude to Shawna, the new mom, maybe sort of dismissive to Shawna, the new mom. And she became the villain because this storyline is comes down to like family systems, and it's a depiction of a dysfunctional family, and it's an exploration of our interpersonal relationships. She came about because I understand how it feels to be invalidated in those heavy, heavy moments. And I think she resonates so deeply because a lot of people understand how that feels. It's as if life is this constant dance between my emotions and your emotions and their emotions and his emotions over there. And it's, how do we all handle how we're feeling in Congress?
Things escalate in your series, or at least maybe they don't escalate as much as we get a deeper look at Barb. And you explore what emotional abuse can look like in a family. I think a lot of people might be familiar with it. It can look like a lot of things. It can look like manipulation, the dismissiveness you talked about earlier, gaslighting, just to name a few. These are non-physical actions, but they're still abuse.
It might be a foreign concept to you, but I don't control and manipulate the people I love. Not sure what you're insinuating. You control and manipulate everyone. It's abuse. Abuse? I'm the one being screamed at. I have asked you, I've begged you 10,000 times to treat us better. Now who's trying to control? Just because I do things differently than you do. You could do whatever you want. It doesn't mean there won't be consequences. Is that a threat? No! So that's why you won't take my calls. I'm getting the silent treatment.
And I'm curious how you went about creating that storyline and dialogue and conflict with Barb, because it feels very honest and authentic, but it also really illustrates the slow burn process of that type of behavior and that type of abuse.
What a hard question. How did I go about depicting that? I think that's probably the most challenging question I've ever been posed. I am a deeply empathetic person, and I am deeply curious about human behavior. I studied child development and human behavior in undergrad. I've read a lot of books about child behavior and human development. I trained in the Meisner method of acting, which is the observation of human behavior. And I think that I understand deeply why something hurts when it hurts. And I don't really know why I understand it deeply. I I understand it when somebody else is going through it, and I understand it when I'm going through it. It's a topic that fascinates me, and maybe for that reason, I have spent a lot of years sort of just in my personal time dissecting it to try and understand it. It, I think, bleeds into all aspects of life. People make decisions, conscious or unconscious, because of how they feel. And that fascinates me too. I think we would be a kinder, more symbiotic society if everyone sort of could understand their emotional nature a little deeper. And so maybe because I'm fascinated by it, I'm and have studied it, I am able to recreate it. But it's not a very simple answer. It's a very complicated question for me.
Yeah. And
I appreciate that.
I think part of why I ask is because similar to the way you've captured motherhood in a way that's more authentic, you've seemed to also capture this type of relationship in a way that's more honest and authentic as well. I keep thinking about if you ever saw the show Everybody Loves Raymond and
Oh, yeah.
Ray Romano's mother. And, you know, I sometimes when I'm watching your show, I think about Barb is very similar to that character, but it's just like it's done with so much more intention, I guess, if that makes sense, and really captures the harm in a way I've never seen before.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Not to disparage that show in any way, but I think it again goes back to heart, because it's for me, Barb and my characters are delving into their emotional landscape and feeling things really emphatically. So there's a lot of depth of emotion to what I'm showing, and so it might be similar characteristics, and maybe even similar jokes. I haven't seen that show in years and years, but I don't think that Barb is pure villain.
So, yeah, I want to ask you about a specific plot point in the storyline.
Okay.
About one of her children deciding to go no contact with her, which for our listeners, if they're not familiar with the term, this is usually a child breaking contact with a parent. It's not always that dynamic, but after kind of sustained efforts to change behavior and ultimately deciding not to have a relationship with that person.
Mom.
Hello, Jonathan. Sounds like a party over there.
I don't appreciate you calling and texting Shawna all day.
Well, neither of you are answering.
That's because we no longer have a relationship.
Jonathan, please. I have a gift for Charlotte.
I don't know how to make this any clearer.
I could have just barged in, you know.
Do not call us. Do not come over. Do not buy my children gifts.
Oh, Jonathan. This is not like you. It's like you're brainwashed. I miss my sweet boy.
Enough, Mom.
All I ever tried to do was love you.
I'm hanging up now. I hope you can reflect.
It was a very emotional storyline that you explored there with your character John deciding to break contact with his mom and no longer have a relationship with her. And I'm wondering how people have how your audience has responded. And specifically, I'm curious if you received any pushback on that, because I think the topic of no contact can be a pretty divisive one.
I've gotten a little bit of pushback from women of a generation older than me, um, who find the content divisive or offensive. And I think that probably speaks to their own life circumstances more than it's saying anything about the content. If somebody finds it threatening, it's probably because of that whole mirror thing. It's holding up a mirror and they don't like what it's reflecting. This is something that happens. We are all walking bags of emotion. And occasionally our stuff spills out on the people around us. If that happens repeatedly in a relationship, a parent-child relationship where there's a power dynamic, where this child is growing up dependent on this person for survival, and knows no other way of being, that is always, always, always the responsibility of the parent. And in the case of the storyline, Barb's emotional life splashed out of her bag, her person, and onto John in a way that made him feel like he couldn't have his own emotions, in a way that made him feel like he was responsible for making her feel better, in a way that made him feel like something bad was going to happen if he wasn't able to get in control of her emotional life. And that's just, none of that is ever the responsibility of a child. It's not a child's responsibility to emotionally regulate their parent. And that's what John's going through. That's what John has been through his entire life. And he got married, he had kids, and watched his mom emotionally abuse his wife in the storyline. And it wasn't until his little sister got pregnant and got engaged and make her responsible for make Jennifer responsible for her emotionality, that John was finally like, this is too much. I can't handle this anymore. And he did what he had to do. And the reception has been overwhelmingly positive, and I get a lot of DMs from people who are grateful for the validation and grateful that somebody else is going through it and it's not just them.
From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Tess Terrible, in for Catherine Shen. We're listening back to my conversation with Shawna Lander, better known online as the actress and content creator of Shawna the Mom. Coming up, we continue our conversation and hear what's next for the series. This is Where We Live. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Tess Terrible, in for Catherine Shen. Today we've been listening back to my conversation with Shawna Lander. She's the actress and creator behind Shawna the Mom. Just a heads up, in this segment, we're going to be discussing pregnancy loss. Later, Catherine Shen joins me to reflect on the conversation we had with Shawna. Let's jump back in. So you don't just explore the dysfunction. You also get into, there's some really beautiful relationships that you have created in this series. And I'm wondering if that contrast was created with intention, because I think we all need that kind of a little bit of instruction of how to have healthy relationships, especially in an adult life. I kind of sometimes call your series Sesame Street for adults in my head.
I love that. Yeah, that was done with a lot of intention. When I realized I had a mother-in-law character in Barb early on, and had requests for the sister-in-law character, I created those two women. I then went, oh, I need a positive matriarch, and balanced it out with Dee Dee, Shawna's mom, and the other grandma for the kids. I grew up reading Highlights magazine, and there was a little comic strip called Goofus and Gallant, and Goofus was always this character who made all these terrible decisions, and then Gallant was a little boy who was the opposite. He made all the right decisions, and that sort of yin yang, I feel has always been necessary. So it's not enough to just make the joke, or just point out the bad thing. You then need to bring it full circle back around to, or at least I have always felt I then need to bring it full circle all the way back around to, well, what can we do here? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the intention behind some of the more supportive, more emotionally intelligent, more emotionally receptive characters.
You're really exploring the ups and downs of family life, of family dynamics, and everything that contains it. I've been wondering, I think for this last year, for a lot of people, we have witnessed a lot of heaviness happening in our world. And I'm not a parent myself, but something I'm hearing from a lot of friends and loved ones that are parents and are navigating parenthood, especially early parenthood, is that it has been extremely hard to navigate both parenthood and navigate the turmoil and the conflict that is happening in our world. Is that something you're hoping to continue to explore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that art explores life. Mm-hmm. Life informs art. And I think that it's my job to reflect the reality of what people are going through. That's a really big concern right now.
Yeah, you explored recently. You had a character. Your character Shawna suffered a late-term miscarriage. This is just one of many heavy plot points. And with a lot of your viewers themselves being mothers, I'm wondering if you feel kind of an extra responsibility to handle these topics, especially these really heavy topics of motherhood, with extra sensitivity, and how you kind of go about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think miscarriage is so, well, in the show is technically stillbirth, but pregnancy loss is fairly common and completely devastating. And at whatever stage it is, it's devastating to the person that goes through it. And with everything that I do feel a really heavy responsibility to the women consuming the content. I am doing my level best to represent how it really feels and looks and is to experience these things. And in terms of pregnancy loss, it just grief, this utter grief journey, while you still have to continue on in life. Because with the pregnancy loss in particular, it's grieving something that to the rest of the world was never really there.
I wish you would cry.
We'll never get to hear his cry.
I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry.
He needs a name.
Jacob. I really like Jacob.
Jacob.
It never materialized. And so women can feel really dismissed in processing that grief because, well, it's all right. You can just try again. You know, don't beat yourself up. You know, that kind of sentiment. And I don't think that there needs to be. We can feel like our body failed us, or that we did something wrong. You know, there's a lot of guilt around it, and it just is more common than any of us know, and more a part of life than any of us know. And I wanted to explore that storyline for that reason. No one likes to talk about the icky things, but it's just more life. It's part of it. It's part of the deal. And there's no roadmap when you get into, any of life, but there's no roadmap for motherhood. And you're not really sure when you are faced with these giant things if you're thinking or reacting in an appropriate way. And I get DMs all the time that are like, thank you so much, that are like, thank you. I felt crazy. I felt like I was the only one.
And exploring so much through the Shawnaverse, the ups and the downs, the grief and the joy. Is there any one thing that you hope your viewers take away when they are watching your videos?
I think that we're all a lot more alike than we are different, and that there's always a conversation that can be had. We don't all have to be so tunnel vision on how it should be. You know, there can be other factors that maybe we're not considering. And so we're probably more alike than we have been led to believe, or than we think we are.
You've explored so many topics, and I know there's a lot to come. I think we're all hoping there's a lot to come. Without spoiling anything, is there any topics or themes that you're hoping to explore in the future?
Love. We're talking about love. That's what's mapped out for the rest of this year.
That was Shawna Lander. She's the actress and creator of Shawna the Mom. You can find the series on your favorite social media platform. Joining me now in studio is Where We Live host Catherine Shen. How's it going, Kat?
Going great.
What did you think of the conversation we had with Shawna?
So my immediate thought actually is I need to listen back to it again because I feel like there's so much nuance and I want to actually go and watch more of Shawna's videos. But I just really agree with what you had mentioned earlier about her authenticity. And it also makes me reflect that we really don't have a lot of information out there for mothers in terms of what Shawna is able to provide. And I also love that that's sort of her philosophy of why she started in the first place. But just lots of questions about how it resonates and the gap that I feel like we still need to cover.
Yeah, in watching Shawna's series, and I've been a loyal follower of hers for a couple of years since she started, she touches on a lot of topics that reminded me of some stuff that we've done on the show, topics of estrangement, of going no contact, of pregnancy loss, of navigating, the ups and downs of parenthood. And, as she ended, even love. Did listening back to this conversation make you reflect on some of our other episodes on Where We Live?
It did, because it does feel very, I mean, there's a reason why you wanted to have this interview with Shawna, I think, is because of so many things that she touches on are things that we touch on. It's just on a different platform in a different way. And I mean, we have done so much on these topics, so it's really hard to think about a particular subject. But I think what actually came to mind really is just a realization of how important it is to talk about these things, especially when we talk about things like estrangement or going no contact and pregnancy loss. And this is just to name a few of the topics that we and Shawna talk about on our respective platforms is the fact that people are willing to talk about it more. There's more openness to it, but there's still a stigma for all of these topics. And if we can do sort of our small part to help open that up, if we're comfortable talking about it, hopefully somebody else will be comfortable. And I hope at the end that it helps their lives a bit more, help them live a little bit easier.
Where We Live listeners know that we cover a variety of topics on air. And part of my job as senior producer is to make sure we're covering it all, a little bit of everything. But I don't really have a category that I put these conversations under. I kind of just call them the human conversations because they're kind of without a concrete label on them when you're talking about just someone's human experience in life, their family experience in life. But I do tend to get more feedback from these conversations than anything else that we produce. And I'm wondering, in the time that you've been hosting Where We Live, if that's been similar for you, and if these conversations that maybe don't have to do with a specific policy or concrete topic like that, how they resonate with you and what you hear back from our listeners on them.
I think ultimately, regardless of what topic we do or what show we have conversations on, ultimately they're all about the humans. Even when we're talking about policy, humans make the policy, and the policy are for humans for the most part. And I think that's actually why I wanted to become a reporter in the first place. And that was my philosophy, being a newspaper reporter. And I don't think that's really changed going into radio, is I am here for the human stories. And it's really, I think I still see this today compared to when I first started in news. It's really challenging to get people to care about things sometimes. And this is not a criticism. It's just a reality that I see a lot. But I do find it to be easier, I think, when you do put a human person in the story, especially someone like Shawna the Mom with the stories that she's sharing, even though she's kind of coming at it in the fictional sense, that it helps people understand each other better. And I hope it helps people understand empathy, or to have more empathy for each other. And I agree with you in terms of the experience that I hear from listeners is most of the times the shows that resonate with them are conversations about humans, and especially if they're about humans that they care about.
I'm Tess Terrible. I'm the senior producer of Where We Live. I'm here with Catherine Shen. We were listening back to our conversation with Shawna Lander. She's the content creator behind Shawna the Mom. Today's show was produced by myself and editor Patrick Scahill. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app, and thank you so much for listening.